Hey, Dr. Putman.
What's up?
Welcome to the podcast. You spoke at chapel last week,
I did, yes.
and it was good.
I appreciate that.
Yep. Okay, so last week at chapel, you talked about you spent a lot of money on CDs.
Like
Make
useless
DVDs,
junk, eating out,
CD-ROMs.
whatever it was we did in the late 90s, early 2000s, Yeah, I spent a lot of money on basically technology that doesn't work anymore. So
Yeah.
when I should have been putting that money in technology stocks, apparently.
Yeah.
Because I said in chapel that if I had put $1,000 in Apple that my freshman semester, which I made enough to do that over the course of a semester, it would be worth somewhere in the ballpark of $600,000 today. So no regrets, but but that I sort of regret a little bit.
Here's a regret. In 2015, I read an article that said if you would have invested $100 in Bitcoin in 2008, you'd be a millionaire today.
Sure.
If you would have, and then so I read that and thought, oh man, I missed the window. Well, no, I didn't. Like if I would have done it that day, even put $1,000 in Bitcoin, it would have been a lot of money today.
I mean, when would you have pulled it out to? I mean, you got to ask those sorts of questions like, well, I probably would have let it get up to, $5,000 and then, I made all this money, pull it out because, you didn't know that it would go up to be, $40,000 a coin. And so, I mean, retrospect is 2020. You can't predict the future. And a lot of people like, if you watch the recent movie about GameStop, the
dumb
meme
money.
stock, dumb money about the meme stocks. I mean, it really kind of tells that narrative from the perspective of ordinary people. Some people who made quite a bit of money, but also because they held on to what was essentially a way overvalued stock. Some people really lost their shirts in it too. They never really had anything to gain from it. So there's a value in selling at a certain point. Particularly, this is why you shouldn't get into the stocks that are that are really just hyped up so somebody can cheat the system. I mean, you need to get into stocks that have some kind of value.
I'm not withdrawing my crypto today just because you said that.
Well, that's fine. I mean, we're crypto might be the wave of the future. It might be the mark of the beast. I don't know. So you can hold on to it if you please.
In Christ, I'm safe either way. So.
Exactly how many NFTs do you have?
I'd rather not share. I will say I started investing in Bitcoin in 2019, though.
Yeah.
Pretty systematically. And then I withdrew right before it turned down in 2020. And I thought it's probably over.
Right.
And little did I know if I just would have kept that system going.
2020 is when it hit some of its, or 21 is when it hit the $63,000 peak or something like that. Yeah.
It was up in the 3,000 range when I was starting to invest in it. And then, or however you want to say it, exchanging my cash for their value. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, I pulled out in 2020 and then it dipped. It went maybe to 5,000 and then down to 2,000 or 1,500. I thought, yeah, it's done. And then it just blew up.
Can I talk about how much money I almost made with Dogecoin? Can we go back
to the moon?
To the moon.
Did you jump on that train too late or on time?
Well, I mean, it was in a timely way, but I mean, it was also, recognizing that this is going to crash. I probably pulled it out a little preemptively. I mean, I think I bought it at 2 cents a coin or something like that. And I mean, before it went all the way up to, I think, 70 cents a coin or something to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that I capitalized like I could have.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, that's a junk coin. It has no value. I think Bitcoin actually does have some stability. It's all like the .com boom of the late 90s and early 2000s. I mean, everybody wanted to launch a .com, and for some reason people thought a company that had a website was inherently more valuable than a company that didn't have a website, particularly a web-based. And how many of those companies that were launched, by some, investors then, venture capitalists who that they just crashed and burned. I mean, it's amazing to me, like in the early 2000s after that bubble, burst, people were like, is there even a future for Amazon? Is there even a future for Google? I mean, you just
Have you ever went back?
No one.
Do you keep your email inbox cleaned up? Okay. Have you ever gone back to your old email addresses from those days and looked to see if you had that original email from Jeff Bezos saying you want to invest?
No, I don't know that I do, but man, that
I've thought about it because I have a couple that like I started in the late 90s, early 2000s. I wonder if I have some emails from some of those guys that say, "Hey, we got this huge investment opportunity."
So I should probably just confess publicly.
So we're back on the air.
I mean, sure, if you want to. When I was in middle school, I ran a really dorky Batman website.
Did you share about this in chapel?
No, I've never shared this. I mean, I may have told you.
Okay,
I don't think I've ever.
This is sounding familiar. But
I
do want to hear it again.
I don't think I've ever told this story from a platform or anything.
We talked about it at Don's Steakhouse that one day.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I mean, like, it was called if you wanted to look it up on like a Wayback Machine, it was called the Anti-Schumacher Batman website. The whole premise of the website was to get Joel Schumacher, who directed Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, fired from directing a fifth Batman movie, which Warner Brothers had scheduled at the time for him to do, called Batman Triumphant. And so we did. We basically collected signatures to try to get people petition to get him canned, and it was really kind of mean. I mean, and it was middle school Rhyne who did this. But there was a book a couple of years ago. It was a New York Times best-selling book that was about the rise of nerd culture, and it specifically mentioned my website.
Wow.
So I feel like I contributed something to all that. Now, the reason I bring that up is because I'm guessing timeline-wise, this probably would have been 97. I mean, I was in middle school still. I hadn't even gone to high school, and I started getting these letters in the mail from a company called Netflix, who wanted to advertise on my website.
Oh my goodness!
And I was like, "What is this? Why would I do that? You don't ask middle schoolers, whether they want to, make savvy business decisions for the future."
Yeah.
But I do kind of wonder.
You're like locked into this day. They give you $3 a month to advertise on your website.
Well, I mean, who knows? I might have just kept that up because there's a whole like business of like nerd websites now. I mean, it's
no doubt.
It's not quite like it was then because it was the Wild Wild West in the 90s, and everybody had a web page. Like there was a page for every little thing, and they were, I mean, it's nothing like the content-driven stuff of today. I mean, it was a few flashy, gimmicky kind of things, and hey, you've got frames on your website. You probably don't even know what that means, but I mean, it was, that was what we did with early HTML stuff, and yeah, so I contributed to the rise of nerd culture, and that's something. And Joel Schumacher actually started talking about that site and his commentaries to the DVDs and the movies and stuff. So
wow,
I mean, it was a big deal then,
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
so you spoke at chapel last week. And you talked about what you
Please.
used your extra money on.
Let's move to something spiritual.
Yeah. So if you were a student today in the same situation, what would be that tangible thing you'd be spending your money on?
As a college freshman?
Yeah. What are you into that?
Well, I think that it's not about what I would be spending my money on. It would be what I would not spend my money on. I think with again, being able to look back and see, I think I would have been I would have been much more efficient in how I spent money and how I saved money, I think. I recommend to all of our students now, be putting back as much as you can, 10, 20% if you can. And the moment you graduate from college or even now, go talk to a financial advisor and start, that process with them. I mean, I just think there's wisdom and prudence in talking to talking to an expert, and letting them guide your financial future as you're getting started, because it's a lot easier right now at the age of 20, 21 to make good financial decisions that have a good long-term impact than it is when, say, you wake up and you're 35 and say, oh, I need to start taking care of business. I might retire in 35 years. So
you just described me to a T.
Yeah,
35, woke up this morning and had that same thought.
I think that is just part. We say a lot of things about Gen Z, that Gen Z doesn't adult well, that they're slow to take up some adulting skills, and that might be true in a lot of areas. I think this is one area where I think they tend to be a little bit more savvy than some previous generations, and that's because internet culture has really kind of made investments and financial planning a little bit more part of our everyday dialogue or discussion, unless we're talking about something like Dogecoin or junk crypto.
So turn off this podcast and listen to Dave Ramsey.
That wouldn't be the first one I would go to.
Who would be the first one you'd go to?
I don't know that I have a podcast to recommend. I would say that, like, there are some great Christian men who do an incredible job. Great, and women. I mean, it's great Christian people who do who've written a lot about finance from a Christian perspective that I think are pretty helpful. Anything you can find by Ron Blue would be good. He's written Bible studies that are published by Lifeway. He's got several books that are available on Amazon. But he is he's retired now, but he was a long-time financial planner, investment guru who owned a very large company. In fact, he started a group of advisors called Kingdom Advisors, who they do very good work rooted in some pretty solid theological principles, one of which is God owns everything. Everything that we have from God is a gift, and that basically what we do with our money as stewards of our money is ultimately for God's glory and God's good. And he talks about some very basic things that would be really good for college students to hear, and I try to teach these in my Christian worldview classes. Like, you budget for the month, you try to have some cash flow at the end of the month. You try to think about long-term savings. And again, stuff like, what Warren Buffett calls the miracle of compounding interest. When you invest your money and money gains interest, and that money gains interest, and that money gains interest, it's like a credit card in reverse. It's money that your money is actually making money. And one of the exercises that I have all my Christian worldview students do is basically figure out how much money they would have to save a month to retire with $1 million in 45 years. How much money would you have to save a month to retire with $1 million in 45 years? Now, I know you think $1 million right now, that sounds like a lot of money. But if you retire at 65, 66 years old, and you have to live on that the rest of your life, given what the rate of inflation that we've seen, $1 million isn't going to be very much in that many years. And what students find is that if I start saving money and just putting money in the bank now, it would take me basically $2,000 a month to get to $1 million by the time I'm 65. $2,000 a month. And that's more than most of us can swing, right? I mean, it's more than I can swing. I'm sure that speaks of recent college graduates as well. So, I mean, compounding interest, though, if your money, over a period of time has an 8% growth, 7-8% growth, or if you go with like the S&P has averaged 10%, basically, ever since the Great Depression. If you let your money make money for you, you could put $150 a month graduating out of college in an investment account every month, and be at that same amount when you retire. You could put more than $150 a month in that account, and you would see that money would be a lot at the end. And I don't want this to sound like, oh, this is all about making money. I mean, I think for Christians, we have to think about kingdom purposes. I mean, the university that you're in right now, quite frankly, would not be able to operate or do business if it weren't for donors who, when they were young, made good financial decisions and were able to pay your bills, to subsidize what the cost of education are. Or you think about things that God does with people, and I'll give you a recent example, local example. A woman, First Baptist Jonesboro, passed away a couple of years ago. She was a good steward of her money. She invested well, and she left a $4 million gift to the International Mission Board, the IMB, Southern Baptist Convention, that will fund a lot of missionaries for a long time. And it was because she had a heart that she wanted to do something good with what God had blessed her with. And I just think along those lines. I mean, it also helps you avoid soul-crushing debt and other things that, we have so many people in our generation who are complaining now that home ownership seems out of reach, things like that. But it doesn't have to be if you make smart decisions at 20, 21, 22. Again, my biggest thing is go meet with a financial advisor. And many of the financial advisors in the area are believers, solid believers. And they could help you make some good long-term decisions.
You talked about technology a little bit. So as far as AI in education, do you think it's more harmful or more useful?
I have a friend of mine Jason Thacker, who wrote a book a couple of years ago called The Future of AI. And I mean, I think the book came out in 2018 or something like that. And I kind of thought to myself at the time, this is crazy. Why are you writing a book about, the ethics of artificial intelligence from a Christian perspective? And I mean, a couple of years later, I had to apologize to him because, I mean, wow, how rapidly has everything changed? AI is everywhere. I mean, whether we're talking about something as simple as you go to McDonald's now to order on a screen, or you go to Acapulco and a cat robot delivers your salsa and chips.
Is that real?
What?
Is that real? I've seen the ad for, or not the ad, the article about it maybe.
Oh yeah, it's real.
You've been there?
I go to El Acapulco quite frequently.
In Pocahontas.
Pocahontas, yes.
They have a cat robot.
It is. I mean, it is a robot-like thing. It's like a cart that's automated, and it knows how to go to your table. And for whatever reason, the little screen has a cat face on it.
Okay.
I can't. I've almost tripped over it once, so there is that. But yeah, I mean, it's real. I mean,
okay. And they just what does it bring you?
A salsa and chips.
I mean, I like that.
I mean, that's all. I mean,
Can we get one in the admissions office?
It is a completely useless novelty. But I don't know. I mean, when you look at it, you think, okay, we're on our way to Terminator. I mean, it's possible that this could advance further than it is, because it's just gone so rapidly.
Nolan, can you go on eBay and see if we can get one for our office? I would love to be delivered chips and salsa.
Just chips and salsa, nothing else. I mean, back to Nolan's question.
Yes.
Do I think all AI is evil? No, not necessarily. In fact, I see a lot of potential good in particular fields, like in agriculture. AI will help farmers, manage their yields. I think AI will help in the diagnosis of patients in the medical field, and hopefully one day we'll have a holographic doctor like they do in Star Trek. There's always that possibility for stuff like that. I'm only kind of kidding about that. So I don't think AI is inherently bad. I think AI, like any other tool, has to be wielded properly. I think the danger of AI is that it really does encourage taking the easiest possible route to get, say, your homework done, which not only cheats and rigs the system, it defeats the purpose of the learning objectives of the assignment, but it also cheats you. I mean, a lot of our students will admit when they get here they are behind in math because they used apps like Photomath to do their math in high school, and here they're trying to get ready to go to medical school, trying to get ready to go on and do bigger and better things, and they are so far behind in math because they use the cheat tool.
When I was a student, the only cheat tool you had was that in the back of the book, the odd answers were provided.
Yeah, right.
Isn't that crazy?
You are old.
I am old.
So
I still have all those math books, by the way.
I'm sure you do.
I love math.
I'm sure you do. So, nerd.
They gave them away for free at the end of 1 year, like all the different levels.
All the different
I was like,
math
I'm just
books.
going to take them all.
Well,
like,
I mean,
why wouldn't you?
Who doesn't have space for every age level of math books? That's perfect. That's what you should have invested your money in when you were a college freshman, is a bunch of math books.
Bunch of math books, yeah. That would have really paid me back.
So
see, I had the other issue coming to college. So I was homeschooled, and I don't know how much this would actually apply to the conversation, but so my mom didn't let us use calculators. She was like, no, work it out on paper, figure it out on your own. And so I had the exact opposite problem. When I took college algebra, everybody else was getting to it faster. And so I'd eventually get there, but I didn't know how to work a calculator because of all the shortcuts and stuff like that.
Sure.
But I can work it out on paper all day long.
Well,
so.
I mean, there's a difference between using a calculator and trying to do the so-called easy part of the math and then using an application that actually works the problem out for you.
Well,
of course, when we were kids, they were like, "You're not always going to have a calculator with you." And
then, that's what my mom said.
Those liars, we all have calculators with us all the time now. So,
yep.
Not my Texas Instruments 83 though. My Texas Instruments 83 was big mama jama, and of course what we did, we hacked these with like a little cord back in the late 90s, and we all put a snake game on our on our TI-83s. It was very exciting. I mean, like, I wanted a calculator that could play Snake. That was my main goal in getting through high school math.
All right. So AI is useful.
It can be.
In this, you wouldn't discourage it if used properly.
If used properly. So I mean, like, there are going to be some people who think we should not do anything with AI in a classroom setting, and to be fair, on some things like basic composition, you don't really need to use AI. Although, I mean, you're using some degree of AI, like in spell checks or something like that. I mean, that is a lesser form of AI, or grammar checks. But to have something write an assignment for you, that is a total cheat, and that lacks integrity. And by the way, reading AI stuff, it doesn't really sound like it's the personality of a college freshman either, and sometimes the facts are way off. Mm-hmm. But is there value in using it, say, to compare literary styles? Like, you could ask ChatGPT to write a play for you based on a biblical passage. You could ask ChatGPT to write a version of Star Wars written in Shakespearean prose or something like that, and it's fun. I mean, there's fun and enjoyable things to do with that, but the problem with that is you can't really pass it off as your own creative work.
No doubt.
I mean, there is. I think we're going to have to learn how to analyze AI. I think that's going to be part of our future anyway, because, I mean, how much of the ordinary emails that we send, or things like reference letters, or things that are pretty commonplace business letters we get in the mail, are going to be AI written in the future? I think probably a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's changed the nature of the game, and in some ways very, very badly.
Yeah.
You know? We can't lose the fact that we are image bearers. We are human, and we need to do things in the humanities, among other things, that make us better humans. And learning how to communicate effectively is one of those things. A robot is not a substitute for that.
Well said. What's your favorite book that you've read that was also written by you? And are your books as easy to read as your lectures are to follow? Have you ever read any of your books? Like went back and read them?
Well.
And what voice do you hear when you do that?
It's British. It's always British. I sound British in my head right now. I don't know if you guys think I sound British, but I sound British in my head.
What TV show did you grow up on?
What? I mean, not every TV show. I was a child, a baby of the '80s, a child of the '90s. I mean,
You didn't like grow up on Peppa Pig though? Is that where that British accent might
no,
have me stuck in there?
No. I mean, probably the English was probably from watching Monty Python in middle school. You know, that's
Fair.
where it picked up. You know, but I also found out the other day, and I've been doing genealogical research, that I am a direct descendant of a man named Roger de Puttenham, who was
Wow.
who was the sheriff of Puttenham.
No way.
He was knighted by Edward II, the King of England, and this would have been in the 13th century. And so, you know, I'm basically a noble.
That's how I got there.
That's.
Did you type into ChatGPT where did I come from, and that gave you?
That's exactly how I found out. Yeah. So I again, I'm just trying to tell you, I'm kind of a big deal. I wanted you to know that.
I'm not surprised.
But as one of my family members responded, there's that Kool-Aid's been watered down quite a bit since then. So, yeah. So do I read my own books? Not as closely as I should, because every time I read them, I find errors. Particularly my first one, I didn't really have a very good editor.
Grammatical or theological? More
grammatical. I don't make theological errors. Well, that's a silly question. Yeah, I mean, no, my books. I sometimes it's good to look at them, but not necessarily. You don't want to stay there too long. It is interesting sometimes when I reread something I wrote a few years ago. I was like, that's an interesting point. I'm very thoughtful. You know?
Yep.
I have tried over time to become easier to read. My first dissertation book was it was a beast. But I mean, people were using it in doctoral programs
in defensive doctrine
across the world. So I mean, it was like
that book.
Yeah, and so I mean, it's very technical. And my second book, When Doctrine Divides the People of God, is a little less technical, but I think it's the most important book that I've ever written, because it's about why Christians disagree about doctrine and what we should do about it. And then
you have to read the book to find out, Nolan.
The Method of Christian Theology. Some of you have read parts of that for Christian Worldview, and I think that's the easiest one to read. But the next one comes out in August. It's a book about the virginal conception of Jesus, called Conceived by the Holy Spirit, and it will be I think it'll be easy to read. It's long, but you can read 10 pages a day or whatever and read it through the Christmas season. So,
do you think the importance of the virgin birth is lost today, in the sense that it's not? I don't know. I don't want to say watered down on the importance, but there's other things that have taken priority over that, and therefore it's.
Well, I mean, I don't think for Orthodox Christians it's ever been lost. I mean, I think it's something that needs occasionally to be defended. A lot of what we call progressive mainline Christians have, long abandoned it. They don't see it as valuable or probable, or some even think it's oppressive doctrine or whatever. There's a lot of postmodern opposition to it. But I think it's good for Christians to reflect on the way that God became man, the distinctiveness of the way that God became man, and why God chose that particular way as opposed to, coming down out of the sky or making Jesus' human nature from the dirt like Adam. I mean, there's a number of different ways that God could have done it, I suppose, but this seems like the best possible way to do it for many, many reasons, which I explore in the book.
You have to read to find out.
August 1.
No
Available
spoilers.
on Amazon, Lifeway, or ChristianBookDistributors.com.
And one of those days it'll go on sale on Kindle, like randomly, like a daily special, right?
Yeah, but my kids don't get to eat as much when you wait till the special, So
get it when it's full price.
Get it when it's full price. It really is. That really is the benefit,
Yep.
No,
Yep.
It really, just price check it. The prices vary widely depending on who's selling it right now. So
yeah,
but it goes anywhere from like $15 to $22. So.
Well, for the record, one day your In Defensive Doctrine was on massive sale on Kindle, and you posted that you could go and get it right now for $2.99 or $4.99,
right.
whatever. So I bought it that day.
Did it change your life?
The first 50 pages that I read did.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that.
I had
That's
some
before the editor took a nap.
I had some other pressing reading going on, but I remember it being a little intimidating in the moment. So
again, that was a dissertation. So
yeah. Well, all right. So that class you mentioned, Christian Worldview, is that different than, like, is there a class called Gospel Story?
Biblical Story.
Biblical Story.
Right, yeah.
Very different. Well, I mean, in a sense, I guess. You could split hairs over.
I would say the Biblical Story class is we used to have an Old Testament and a New Testament class, and it was kind of intensive. This class, the whole semester, we're going to be in Old Testament. This semester, we're going to be in the New Testament. And we didn't really have anything that was specifically theological or apologetic that was required for all students. And so the idea was to, instead of giving that intense focus on the Old or New Testament, we just do the whole Bible as one big story in a semester, and that's the Biblical Story class. From Genesis to Revelation, this is what the basic plot of the Bible is. If you don't know anything about the Bible, here's some bare bones basics about it. And then Christian Worldview was, I mean, when I designed the class, my thought in mind was, if you don't know anything about Christianity before you begin this class, you'll at least come out with some of the basics. And so we talk about the nature of the gospel. Talk about some fundamental Christian beliefs, basic Christian ethics, spiritual disciplines, and even some practical things like what I just talked about with financial management and stuff. I mean, it is anything that we could put in the kitchen sink in one semester. If you were only to have one semester to hear about what Christians think and do, that's it. That's what I wanted to do.
Have you taken that class, Nolan?
Mm-hmm.
What'd you think of it?
He slept through most of it.
Okay, so I had Biblical Story with Dr. Putman, but the only weird thing about that class was that nobody would sit up at the front, and so we started the class middle of the back row in that class.
It was in the bowling alley in the MC 200. So
yeah, it was so awkward though. That was the only thing. It was nobody on the first date. We just didn't go to the front, and so he came down and started class there.
And I hate that classroom for a number of reasons, but I had to walk up and down the aisles and I like to survey what our iPads are looking at the moment, There's a couple of times where I just closed people's iPads in class. I said, that's not Biblical Story, so Nolan was probably witness to that. So
well, we were no tech our semester.
Oh yeah, good for you. Good for you. Yeah. I kind of waffle on that topic. I think there's value in tech, but also so much distraction. So, TikTok generation, it's for you.
I was at a church where there was no screens. They printed the worship guide each week with all the songs and prayers and lyrics and everything in there. And it was intentionally so that people could take an hour and a half break from technology.
It's really a good idea.
I
think there was somewhere along the line where people said, I'm going to take a break from paper. Like when in the earlier technological shifts, like when the printing press, I really have looked at a lot of paper, too much paper.
Well, y'all will know this. I'm going to ask this because I'm a millennial. You're a millennial too, I'm sure.
I'm a
right?
millennial.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
in the classic definition of millennial, yes.
You're a millennial who does research. Not that I don't. My research just involves bicycles, but
I spend a lot of time researching bicycles too.
Okay. 7 years ago,
okay,
I remember.
That was a lie.
I remember reading that you retain 50 to 70% more when you read on paper versus reading it like on a Kindle or technology. But that might have been a study based on people who had like grew up with one way and then were given their iPhones later in life, like myself. Yeah. So is that percentage changing at all? Or do y'all know?
I don't know the data on that. What the data that I've spent the most time with is the value of handwriting versus typing notes. And
elaborate.
I mean, it's more convenient to type notes, no doubt. But there's something about the way the brain registers information when you write it out by hand. The retention is far better.
Even if it's much shorter and more compact and fragmented?
Yeah, I mean, it can be. Okay. So I mean, one thing I would push students to do, if they can get like an app on their iPad that allows them to take notes, like an Evernote or something like that, and just write by hand. Even you can save it. You're not going to lose it. If you want that digital accessibility, but you could still have the benefit of actually writing it out. I think it does tremendous good for us to do that. But I think that's an interesting question. I don't know about retention. I tend to, and this is again the millennial in me probably, for books that are really important that I know that I need to use for, like, say, writing projects, I always get a paper copy. But if it's a book that is something I would just kind of like to read on the go for fun, that's when I'm going to use the Kindle version, or even Audible for something just for fun.
Big time on the handwriting thing. So I'll take notes on my iPad, and then I'll go back and I'll like write out the real important stuff on it's 99 cents. Go buy a notebook at Walmart. And really helps me. But
I'm big into Audible as well, and it took me a while to figure out how to retain and listen and get into it. But once I did, I feel like it's a very effective tool. Personally, but it did take a while. It's like learning to read. It's a new skill set, and you have to exercise.
Well, I'll tell you what I try to do with Audible, and this is going to sound crazy to some people, but even when I'm driving down the road and I'm listening to an Audible book, like right now, I'm on a French history kick. I am consuming as much French history as I can. Don't ask me why, but it's just been my obsession of late. But I'm trying to visualize each sentence as the narrator speaks it. Like, I try to see the words in my mind as I, and that helps me pay close attention.
I have an idea for your next book.
Okay.
The famous book, How to Read a Book.
Yeah. Mortimer Adler.
How to Listen to a Book.
There you go.
Written by Dr. Putman.
Well, I have to learn how to do it well before I can write about it. So
just make it an audiobook.
Well,
listen to the words I'm saying. See them in your head.
They did an audiobook of one of the Method of Christian Theology book a few years ago, and they didn't even tell me they were going to do it. They just did. I mean, it's in my contract. We can do whatever we want. With your stuff. We can make an audiobook. And so it was. I mean, the guy that did it did a great job. I mean, he sounded way better than it would be if I were to read my book. But it was kind of weird when he started making Mississippi State jokes in his voice rather than mine. So all my distinctively Southern characteristics didn't come across quite as naturally in an audiobook reading.
If I'm going to listen to a marketing book or a business book, I really like it when it's read by the author and you have the right emphasis in the right areas and the.
I don't know. I would like a marketing book read by Ian McKellen. That would be. I would listen to that book.
Yeah. I mean, it would add a new depth to it and maybe a different take on it.
Yeah,
in a helpful way.
Right.
Okay. Hey, so about movies, real quick. Let me ask this one. You used to write movie reviews.
Not consistently. No, I mean,
were they on Facebook or did you put them out?
I mean, I would do that kind of stuff on my Facebook, like comment on movies and that sort of thing. I don't know that I ever wrote a full review of anything, but
yeah,
that would have been a chore to write a lot about.
It seemed like you were writing a bunch about them.
I maybe so. I mean,
okay.
I don't remember my Facebook habits from 10 years ago. I tried to block that part of my memory, so.
Okay, well, I will not ask what sparked that interest then, so never mind.
Well, Are
you still a big movie guy?
Yeah, I mean, when I have time to watch movies. With children, I don't, like, I like to watch, the movies that are generating all the buzz or whatever, and like I did the Barbenheimer experience this summer, I mean, there was that. I honestly, it has to be more of a special kind of flick to get me out the door these days because of just the time it takes and the expense. Oh my goodness, it's so expensive. The last movie I went to go see, I actually took my wife to go see the Mean Girls musical, and
was it good?
I mean, if you like Mean Girls, it was
the 2004 version.
I think it was a step down.
Oh yeah,
but I mean, and just
that was a classic at the time.
Again, it's definitely you can tell in 20 years how different our society sees certain things. Like the worldviews of Hollywood in 2004 have changed a little bit. I mean, progressed, if that's the word they want to use. But they've changed dramatically since then, and so while it was fun, it had its enjoyable moments. I'm just sitting there kind of bemoaning the future at the same time. I mean, that's what happens when the difference maybe in me between watching a teen movie as a near teenager and watching a teen movie as a soon to be parent of a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty different experience.
Well, and our daughters are our little best friends.
Yeah.
And in 10 years from now, it's just wild to think about what their life is going to be like.
Terrifying. Bill, thank you for
You're welcome.
Filling my dreams with fear and giving me nightmares.
All right, so you're the academic dean, vice president of academic affairs. So to quote Office Space, what would you say you do here?
I make sure that the TPS reports are no, my primary responsibility.
You saying that reminded me that the guy, when he's being interviewed, says the manufacturers can't talk directly to the customers; they need a middleman.
That was what I was going for.
I wish you would. Yeah. I forgot that part happened.
My primary responsibility is overseeing academic life in the school, whether that's curriculum, whether that's faculty, whether that's courses, whether that's scheduling, and kind of ensuring that part of the school works. And it can be kind of tedious sometimes, but it can be really fun when you're, casting vision for potential programs in the future and how we can make our present programs better.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing that we're always trying to do is evaluate our present programs to see what our strengths and weaknesses are and how can we improve. So